I did my undergrad degree at Baylor University in Waco, Texas, and I ended up doing 5 years in undergrad. Surprise, surprise, for whatever reason. 5 was the right number for me. And then I ended up doing my grad school auditions twice, had to do them twice, 2 years in a row. I did get accepted my first year, but it didn't feel like the right step to go ahead and start that. And so I ended up doing 5 years in undergrad. And then I had this gap year where I taught voice lessons and did lots of competitions and auditions, but nobody had told me I was going to have a gap year. And it was a little troubling at that time because I was thinking, oh no, now I'm going into grad school and I'm 2 years older than some people who went to grad school, but it ended up being fine because I actually had some real life experience and more audition experience than a lot of folks who had gone straight from undergrad, only doing 4 years, straight into grad school. So pros and cons, right? So it took me a little bit longer. And then I went to Indiana University for my master's degree at age 24, started at 24. And then I did 2 years there. And then, a lot of folks right after grad school is when they get into a young artist program. I did not. I had yet again another little gap time.
And failure, so Rebekah. I'm an absolute failure. I mean, you didn't.
I know. It's like, oh no, I didn't get XYZ. I must really stink, or I must need some extra help. And it's like, yeah, no, you're fine. And I think we met when I was doing a competition during my first gap year in between undergrad and grad school. Yeah. When I went and I had time, this is, gap years, pros and cons, all of this. But one of the things that a gap year gives you time to do is to take auditions and to do competitions, that if you were in school, in classes, in production for your school opera, all of these are valuable, valuable experiences, but they take up time in your schedule. And so if you want to go do a competition, you have to get permission, and you have to, ask to be released, and you have to ask for all of these things. If you're in school, if you're in undergrad or grad school or a young artist program, you are not entirely in control of your schedule. And so you have to ask for permission to go do these things. If you have a gap year, I'm just telling you, your time is your own. And while that's a little bit daunting, it's also incredibly liberating because you can fill it with wonderful things like teaching your first voice lesson to someone else and learning how to own your own technique by explaining it to someone else and having to help them through that process of becoming a better singer. Or you can fill it with times where you go coach with somebody that you've wanted to have a coaching with, but for whatever reason, they weren't the coach assigned for your opera that your school was working on, or whatever reason. Maybe you want to go have a voice lesson with somebody that you've never worked with before, just to get another opinion or something. You have all of this wonderful time. Go take a class at a community college in a foreign language where you have actual hands-on, grammar practice and all of that. I never did that one, but I did get to go study in Germany in the Goethe Institute when I was in grad school. So anyway, that's as the witch from Into the Woods would say, that's another story. Never mind. Anyway, but when you have these gap years, you have all of this time and you have to use it wisely. That's what I would say. A gap year is not a bad thing. It's never a bad thing to have extra time as long as you use your time wisely and invest it. So,
can I tell you how much I love that you brought up the gap year? You don't know this. Now, you know that I've been busy building a course called Audition Breakthrough. But what you don't know is that I have a whole lesson about the gap year.
I love that.
And the controversial gap year, because I realize it's controversial and some people listening are going to freak out and go, whatever. And honestly, I think even, let's be honest, some parents, when they hear their kids say, I think I need to do a gap year for whatever reason, that's scary because they're afraid. Are they quitting? Are they giving up? But I think there's, like you said, there's pros and cons to everything. But I think there are way more pros to a gap year than cons. So I love that you brought that up because that's validation for me and what I was thinking and what I was teaching and what I was sharing. So that's fantastic. And, you know, you made a comment about applying or auditioning for grad school. I actually didn't know this, that you did it twice. But again, that was before you and I met. So, you know, I've done that. So I'm curious, was your decision not to go because you weren't thrilled with where you were going or your options, or, you know, what was that? Like, this isn't right. I'm not going to spend my money on this, right? Because you're spending money.
Right.
Schools, even with scholarships. That's my other issue with gap year. It's an extraordinary amount of money for grad school. So if it's not 100% the perfect fit, you need to say no, right? If it's not the teacher you want, if it's not the program for you, why are you going to spend potentially $40,000, $30,000 a year in debt for something that is not the perfect fit for you? You know?
Right. Well, I'll tell you. So my first year when I was auditioning, I was also finishing my 5th year at Baylor, right? So I'm in classes, taking competitions, doing auditions. And at that point, I had a very successful undergrad career, if we can call an undergrad education a career at that point. Like, on paper, my resume for an undergrad student was pristine. I had been given opportunities to do lots of roles at Baylor, and I had done my first Get Paid to Sing Young Artist program in 2014 at Chautauqua Opera, and you know, all of these things. Really great resume. And so I go and I do these auditions for grad schools, and oh no, I hadn't done that because 2014 was the summer after my 5th year. Anyway, still, resume looked really great for being a soprano, because there's a lot of us.
2013, because you and I met in 2014.
Yes. So so 2013, I hadn't done Chautauqua just yet, but I had done another young artist program and won several competitions, distinguished myself as a young, promising singer, right? And I had been given a substantial scholarship at Baylor, which I'm very thankful for, because I still remember when I was auditioning for undergrads, my dad said, well, if it's not a full ride, it's going to be a short ride. so let's be real. And so I was thankful. I ended up, you know, with a great scholarship package to Baylor, and I go and I do these auditions my first time around, and I only auditioned for 2 schools. And they were really competitive schools. It was Indiana University and Cincinnati Conservatory. I got waitlisted for Cincinnati. And I got like a quarter financial aid package from Indiana. So it was facing a decision. I mean, full disclosure, you know, Cincinnati.
I appreciate this.
Yeah.
I appreciate this so much. People need to hear this. This is real life.
Yeah.
These are the decisions.
Yeah. Real talk. Here we go. Yeah.
Make, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So at Cincinnati Conservatory, what most people don't realize is they will only take specific numbers of specific types of voice types. So they did not need a light soprano. Yep. They didn't need one. It wasn't
way. Yes. They already know what operas they're casting. And so there's a very specific, and so you not getting in doesn't mean that you didn't have a fabulous audition. But if your voice isn't going to be in the opera that year, you're not going to get in. And
too bad. Yeah.
And they're usually deciding on their repertoire usually up to 2 years ahead, but you don't know that.
Right.
Like, it's not released.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you're trying to do your grad school experience at a certain time in your life and they don't need you at that time, it's just not going to be a good fit.
Yeah. Right.
Unfortunately. And that's just the way things happen sometimes. Anyway, so I got waitlisted for Cincinnati and was disappointed. And then Indiana was the only other school that I had auditioned for. Again, a huge program. And I only got offered a quarter of the amount needed to cover my expenses. And it was like, oh, I cannot rush into this decision. I need to I don't feel comfortable signing up for that amount of debt under these circumstances. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to take a year. At that time, I started teaching voice lessons when I was the summer after freshman year of undergrad.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So at that point, I had been teaching voice lessons for all through undergrad, had a thriving studio in Waco where I was going to school during my 5th year. And so I thought, you know what, I'll stay here. Waco's a fine place to be based for a while. I'll keep studying with my teacher. I'll keep working with my coach. I'll keep teaching my voice lessons. And then I'm going to do every single competition that I can put an application in for, because I want more audition experience. Because if something, and that was the other thing, I was not pleased at all with my Indiana audition. Wasn't pleased in the least. And sometimes it's okay. I recently sent you a recording, Cherie, and I asked for your feedback, and you were like,
yep. Mm-hmm.
You said, no, that's not you. And it's okay. Everybody has an off day, and sometimes you scrap it and then you make it again. And then the next one, it's like, oh, there I am. You know?
Yeah. And so represent yourself. So you knew you didn't represent you. Everybody has a good day.
It was a bad day. Everybody has a bad day. And my bad day was on the day that I auditioned for Indiana the first time. There you go. Anyway.
And you talk about then going and doing those competitions and stuff. And of course, I'm glad you did a gap year, because I might not have ever met you.
I know.
Since I was the accompanist for one of those competitions, which you won. Okay. So let's just talk about how fantastic all of that was for you.
Right.
So I love how thoughtful you were about your decisions. And I think so many people would feel the pressure of like, well, I got in. So how can I say no? I know the money's not there, but I got in. And the pressure to accept that. But the reality is, and there's no polite way for me to say this, and we're going to talk about money. I know we are. Look, we're not doctors. We're not lawyers. My friends who are in those fields who I've talked to, and they've racked up crazy amounts of debt, but they also know that they're going to be getting big payback, big whatever.
Yes.
That's not the reality for our profession.
Correct.
You have to weigh the realities of expected salary in the future to the kind of debt that you're taking on.